Hey everyone, Gerald Spohrer here. We just finished up stage 4, Lake Chickamauga Bass Pro Tour event. I got beat in that one. I didn't have a problem catching fish, but you know, I still wanted to take the time to give everyone a tournament recap. I want to do them whether I do good or bad. You know, you could dial in on what you need to do to catch bass in this deal, but if you don't have a way to catch them fast enough, with every fish counts, you can get left in the dust really fast, and then you start trying to play catch up, and sometimes in your attempts to catch up, you could fall further behind, because if things don't happen immediately, if you say in my situation, I had some ways to catch some bass, and I had some ways to catch some nice bass, get some good bites, and I didn't know how fast the pace was going to be, because we're not allowed to talk to each other in the tournament or during practice. I room with a few other competitors, and we can't even talk about if we're getting bit or not. So I have no idea how to gauge the pace of the tournament until that ScoreTracker starts going off. It's a very tricky deal. So I started out up the Hiwassee River on Lake Chickamauga, and I would run up there and I'd start fishing boat docks first thing in the morning. I actually put the first fish on the ScoreTracker, and it was close to 3 pounds. Did that right off the bat. Thought it was going to be a good start for me, and then they started really catching them, and they were catching them almost every cast. At one time, my boat official said they were putting 20 bass on the ScoreTracker every 5 minutes. So when that started happening, of course, you kind of just run with your deal for a little while, and then I had to say to myself, what I'm doing is not fast enough. I need to catch them faster. So at that point, I had to make a decision to try to do something completely different, and based off my practice, I didn't know a way to get bit quicker. So I just completely basically punted right after the first period on the first day, and tried to make an attempt to change my game plan and catch them quicker. So I was covering a lot of water and covering it really fast, because I was just basically looking for clues to make me slow down. You know, I started out in my practice, we got a lot of rain in that tournament, and those fish on the Tennessee River, they feed a lot on gizzard shad, so they like stuff that's white. And I started skipping docks and fishing around laydowns and the back of creeks and everything, and I was throwing a 1/2 ounce white Jack Hammer Chatterbait with a Zako trailer on it. I was throwing that on 18-pound Sunline Sniper fluorocarbon, and I was throwing that on the Chatterbound from Alpha Angler with a high-speed 8-to-1 gear ratio reel. And a lot of people always ask me, why do you fish such a high-speed reel with a chatterbait? Well, when you're covering water in the springtime or any time of the year, and you're moving towards the bait, you need that reel to be able to keep up with the bait. So it's not like I'm just standing still making a cast and pulling it directly back to me from a still position. I'm casting forward, moving forward, so that 8-to-1 helps compensate for me covering water. So that's why I fish with a really fast reel most of the time. So that was my deal. I thought I was going to pretty much lock this in my hand the whole tournament, and I can get bit on it pretty good, especially on those cloudy, rainy days. Those fish were around the cover. They weren't really in the cover, and so the chatterbait was great for just throwing it off the ends of laydowns, throwing it around the side, covering the water in between from laydown to laydown or dock to dock or whatever kind of pocket I was in, and it seemed to be the most efficient thing for me. But I wasn't getting enough bites. The first day I probably had enough bites to do really good, but execution was really poor. One of the problems you have in the springtime with a chatterbait is a lot of fish want to completely eat the bait. So you have to think about this. If they eat the bait and turn on it, they'll get hooked every time. But if they completely eat the bait, a lot of times they'll choke it, and then the hook will get them way in the back of the throat, but it won't get bone. It'll just get some skin. It'll skin hook them in the back. So I've learned my lesson this year, especially. It's kind of scary to boat flip anything over 3 pounds with a chatterbait. If you can't see the chatterbait and you're thinking, oh, he's got it, it's in his crushers, It's probably still not a good idea to boat flip them because I lost several crucial fish this year trying to boat flip them. And then I started like reaching down and grabbing fish and realizing that it was just barely catching skin in the back of the throat. So just because they got it choked doesn't mean that you can't still lose them. It just depends how much of the hook is where it needs to be. So there's a couple things you can do to compensate for that. I try to slow my rod down, and that's what the Chatterbound's great for. It has really good soft bend to it, and it helps compensate for any overreaction. And one thing I found that helps is instead of setting a hook when a fish completely is eating the bait like that, it's almost better just to start pulling and reeling into them, because it'll drag that bait across the roof of their mouth more than if he swallows the bait. If he's a 4+ with a big mouth, he'll swallow the bait, and if you set the hook, a lot of times it'll blow the chatterbait out of their mouth completely, and a hook will never get in his mouth. So you'll get the bite, your natural reaction is to set the hook, and you'll blow that chatterbait out and lose them. So slowing down the rod helps compensate for that reaction, and trying to just reel down into the fish and doing a slow pull on them, I'll help get that hook in them better. So that's just a couple tips for that time of the year. If you're missing a lot of fish on a chatterbait in the springtime, there is some things you can do to try to mitigate it. So that's just a couple of tips right there. But that first day I had a lot of bites. It was cloudy and rainy and all that stuff, so the chatterbait thing was working for me. And I had found an area by making moves, switching areas to try to pick up the pace. I pretty much abandoned some of my places where the quality bites were, and I went to areas where I thought I can get more bites. And I found an area where they really felt like they were moving in. And so the next day I tried to start on this area. I saw some big gizzard shad coming up and flickering, and it had the perfect recipe as far as being a spawning flat. It had big stumps on it, and it had the perfect sloping banks on both sides. So I'm thinking in my head, this is where I need to start, capitalize on the morning flurry, and I felt like I could make up the difference. Well, that didn't work out for me. The next morning I started in there, and me and several other anglers started in there. And the good thing about Bass Pro Tour is I can watch the ScoreTracker. None of us were really catching them. The water had cleared up because it had stopped raining that afternoon before, and the dirty water that had these fish real active, it wasn't as dirty, and you couldn't get bit as good. So guys were pulling out spinning rods with wacky rigs and shaky heads and all that stuff. That's not my style. If I had been up in the score, then I probably would have did the same thing. But being that I had ground to make up from losing fish the day before, I basically sped up and I started covering a lot of water. So after the first period went by and my starting plan didn't bring me where I wanted to be, then I basically started trying totally different new things, and I ran all the way to one end of the lake past Harrison Bay, in the back of Harrison Bay, and they got a river back there. I knew they had some dirty water back there, and I tried to go fish docks on the back of that deal, and I hadn't had any success back there in practice, but I was hoping that may turn on or something. So I tried that. It didn't work. And then basically I ran back up the river and ran all the way above I guess Dayton, and started running backwaters up there, and started flipping, doing some flipping, so I was flipping. One of my main things is why I wanted to flip. One of my favorite dock flipping baits is as a missile. This is an Ike mini flip from Missile. I always pair it with either a little Zoom Baby DBomb, or I'll put this Missile Baby DBomb, or this little Zoom trailer right here, and I'll thread it all the way up there and make it really compact. I love flipping docks with this one. If I got to really, really heavy cover and I wanted to flip the heart of a laydown, then I would flip my jig from Beast Coast, the Battle Flip, and then I would also flip. If I wanted to be more finessey, I would flip this is called GP3. It's a baby destroyer from Missile, and I'd put a little 1/4 ounce Beast Coast tungsten weight with a little 3/0 Gamakatsu Aaron Martens heavy cover flipping hook, and I would Flipped that on, I think I was flipping this one on like 16-pound Sunline. I have a lot of confidence, even though it's 16. Just compensated for the ride. This was a Zillla 7.3 medium heavy. It's a great flipping. This is our all-around rod from Alpha Angler. The Zillla, you can do a lot with it, but it's really great for flipping these little light flipping baits with a 1/4 ounce on there. And then, of course, I was doing this one on a hitter. This is a 7.6 heavy fast, and that's a 1/2 ounce mini flip jig, black and blue, and that had 20-pound sniper fluorocarbon on it. And so that was, you know, I was pretty much doing the chatterbait and flipping those 2 baits and just covering water, and it wasn't happening fast enough. So I kept trying to go faster and kept moving. And I didn't have a problem getting bites, but it just wasn't happening fast enough because they were putting so many fish on the ScoreTracker. So I kept on trying to reinvent the wheel the whole time. And I figured it out, but I figured it out too late. And, you know, I was almost at the bottom going into the end of, going into the 3rd period of the second day. And then I finally picked up this is a prototype swim jig from Beast Coast. I say it's a prototype. We've already approved it for production. It's supposed to be coming out here in the next 2 weeks. We call it the Gorilla Swim Jig. This thing has been a player for me so far. This is the 3rd. Actually, no. I caught him in Raleigh. I tested it out in Raleigh, and then I picked it up again on Chickamauga, and I was kicking myself that I didn't throw this thing the entire time. Because once that sun came out, and I needed to put the chatterbait down is what I needed to do, and then I started swimming this jig. As you can see, this is a 3/8. We also have a really cool size. That's a 7/16 that's coming out, and then the 3/8. But this thing is designed for catching big fish in the springtime. It's got a huge hook in it. It's like basically an indestructible hook. It's like a tuna hook, and you could throw this thing. I had it on 50-pound braid, and I put a little. I either use a Missile Twin Turbo, or this is a little Menace grub, and I have that on a 8-to-1 high-speed reel also. And this is also a signature rod that we're working on with Alpha Anglers, and it's basically a shorter version of a hitter, and it's perfect for swimming a jig and a frog and everything else. And I've been really testing it out, but I caught some big fish on this. I caught around close to 20 pounds going into the last 45 minutes or so of the tournament. And if I'd have been doing it all day, I would have really lit up the ScoreTracker. But I was basically throwing this jig into the laydowns and swimming it over a lay down, then I let it drop into a lay down, and then I was swimming out real erratically, and those fish couldn't stand it. He was forcing a reaction bite within the lay down. Instead of flipping in the lay down and just kind of daubing a bait around, I wasn't getting as many bites doing that. I started erratically pumping this swim jig in and out of those lay downs, and almost got to the point where I could call my shots on them. It was at the very, very backs of small pockets. Basically the last few laydowns you can get on. I would hit those things, I would crank up, and I would run out there and run into the next one. And once I figured out that was the deal, I was out of time. But I really want to share that with everyone. The swim jig bite this time of the year can catch you a really big bag. I caught a 6-pounder on this thing right before the day was over with. It was really cool because I jumped a few people and was able to save some points. It's real important that we make that RedCrest at the end of the year. But this thing so far has caught me a 6'11", a 6'15", and a 6-pounder during a major league fishing event. And this is the same exact swim jig, because I only had one because it was a prototype, and I punished this thing, and it's still, you know, the hook and everything's still intact perfectly. So I'm really in love with this jig. We went back and forth on it a lot until I was willing to put my name on it. So look for this to come out. It's called the G-Spo Gorilla Swim Jig from Beast Coast, and I'm really proud to put my name on that one. So we're going to integrate a few fish catches in this video, but I just want to kind of tell everyone what was going on. I'm sure I had 5 fish that went over 20 pounds the last day. You know, getting those big bites was not an issue for me, and I could have had a really good tournament, but to catch the numbers was the trick in this one, and I still want to share with everyone how I caught them this time of the year on Lake Chickamauga. So next, we're pretty much past the spawn, and we're going to Smith Lake. We went from bass spawning to now I'm pretty sure the biggest player is going to be a shad spawn. So look for that white swim jig to play a big role, that white chatterbait, spinnerbait, getting on that shad spawn bite. First thing in the morning is going to be huge. Should be a lot of fish caught on Smith Lake. There's a huge spotted bass fishery, and I think you're going to have to target spotted bass if you even want to have a chance. And it's going to be another one of those deals where they're going to be putting 30, 40, 50 fish a day on the ScoreTracker. So if you're only catching 20, if I catch 20 bass, that's a pretty good day of fishing. It may not even come close to being enough weight to do, because most of the field is going to probably catch 30 or 40 bass. So it's real important to get those bites and to catch some quality in the mix. You can't just go and catch a bunch of 1-pounders. You have to catch those 2, 3, 4-pounders to even have a shot. So look for that to be an exciting event, and we'll do another recap after that. And we're halfway through the tour season. And then we're going to start rolling into these cup events where there's no practice, totally off the fly, just like MLF you've seen before. And then we got the other championships, the Cup Championship and the RedCrest Championship, which they announced is going to be in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which I'm really excited about. And so we'll keep you up to date on everything that we qualify for and how we did it to get there. So right now we're mid-packing points, and we'll see if we can move up a little bit, because top 30 go to that RedCrest, and right now we're 40th in points out of the 80, and so we got to move up in these next few events. But good start to the Bass Pro Tour so far, halfway through the season, and thank you all for watching. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can build this up and try to teach everyone how we catch fish. You know, I try to keep everything 100% raw, and I'm not, you know, I don't want to blow smoke up anybody. This is how we really fish for these deals, and this is how I make it happen. So if you can learn something, like it and follow us, and hopefully we can teach you more as we go along. Thank you.